I am the Space Quest historian. In this series, we're taking a look at the various ways the Space Quest series can sometimes dick you over unfairly. In previous episodes, we've covered everything from invisible glass shards to overly effusive alien xenomorphs that don't respect your personal space. But this episode is going to be a little bit different, because this time, we'll be diving into Space Quest 3, The Pirates of Pestilon from 1989, a game that actually seems to show an astonishing amount of mercy towards the player. The game has precious few dead-end situations, and for the most part, if you miss out on acquiring an essential item, the game will just let you go back and pick it up without so much as a scowl or a condescending remark. It's not like it's King's Quest IV or anything. I mean, the opening scene in the garbage freighter is essentially a self-contained little tutorial area where none of the items you pick up are ever used elsewhere in the game, so there's no chance you'll miss an important item here that you'll only come to discover you needed way later down the line. Now, there are some minor dick moves to be found, sure, such as the slightly pointless exercise of having this rat mug you and then having to go back to his lair and pick up the power generator again, or why falling 2 feet off the aluminum mallet here causes death instead of just a mildly sprained ankle. But there's nothing here that will seriously impede your progress, and certainly nothing that will ever leave you stranded with no recourse other than to start over from the beginning. In fact, the game is so kind to you that if you somehow find yourself on top of the aluminum mallet without a ladder and need to get back down for whatever reason, you can even slide off the hood of the ship and land safely. It's such a weird little grace to put in, particularly when you consider that the only way to find yourself in this situation would be to board the aluminum mallet, fix up everything inside to get it working, which includes the generator, the warp motivator, and a piece of wire, lift off the ground, which knocks the ladder off the side of the mallet, and then land again. Now, if you've gotten this far, you've already accomplished everything you need to escape the freighter, so there's absolutely no reason why you would land the fucking thing again, or why sliding down the hood is even an option. My guess is, it's just an option if you're playing the game for the first time and you might be wondering, hey, did I miss something somewhere else on the freighter? Maybe you want to take another look around or something. But trust me, you don't need to. You don't have to. You've already finished the opening part of the game. And once you get off the freighter, the game continues to be almost suspiciously kind to you, especially when compared to its predecessors, Space Quest 1 and 2. Sure, there are a couple of more teensy dick moves like the Scorpisoids who randomly show up on screens to chase after you on the planet of Fleapod, but a quick exit and re-enter the screen maneuver causes them to just magically disappear into the ether, so they're not really a big concern or anything. Slightly higher on the dick move scale is when you get to Ortega and blow up the shield generator that cloaks the pirate's moon of Pestilon. Now you have to rush back to the mallet and make your escape, and the logical assumption to make is that the game is now on a timer. If it runs out, the landscape around you erupts into a massive ball of molten hot lava and it's game over. But actually, there's no timer at all. Instead, the game is just counting how many screen transitions you make before you get back to your ship. So, for all intents and purposes, you can spend as much time as you want leisurely sauntering down the cliff and off to your ship, even as everything is shaking around you like a stripper at a cop's birthday party. All you have to do is make sure you don't change screens more than 15 times. If you do, the game still lets you keep going, it just waits until you try to enter the screen where the mallet is parked, and then it blows you up. Again, I can only speculate as to why the two guys decided to do it this way, but my guess is it was to give the player the impression that they almost made it before the non-existent timer ran out, so they'd get extra frustrated at being so close to escaping and assume they literally ran the clock out by just a few seconds. Oh, and looking through the telescope to admire your act of wanton destruction? Yeah, that counts as a screen transition. But still, 15 screens is mighty generous. In fact, looking through the entirety of the game, there are only 2 genuine softlock situations that we've been able to find. And to find yourself at the mercy of either of them, you really have to go out of your way, to the point where I'm pretty sure most people who have played the game wouldn't even know they were in there in the first place. The first one involves the Arnoid Annihilator's invisibility belt. If you decide to go the fancy route and lure him under this overhang to get eaten by these pod-like creatures, you have to find something to get the belt out from under them. Because even though these cute little pod fellas just chow down on a massive hulk of copyright infringement adjacent metal, they're still hungry for seconds, so you can't just waltz under them and pick it up with your hands. The most obvious item for getting the belt out is the Orid on a Stick toy you can buy from Fester's World of Wonders. Now, Fester closes up his shop while you're getting chased around by the android, but he opens back up after the android's been dispatched with, so there's no softlock to be found there. You still have plenty of opportunity to go back and buy what you need, but of course buying something means you have to have the money to pay for it, and it is perfectly possible to blow all your cash on other distractions like playing too many games of Astro Chicken or ordering every item on the menu at Monolith Burger. And if you're this fiscally irresponsible with your in-game money, then fine, yeah, that's also technically a soft lock, because you also need to have money left over to buy the thermoweave underwear from Fester in order to survive on the lava planet Vortega in the first place. But that aside, even if you're unable to get the all-red on a stick from Fester to get the belt, that's not really a soft lock, because there's still another item in the game that you can use to get that little thing out, and it's this pole you pick up on Ortega. I already covered this in another video, but it still seems to surprise a lot of people when I bring this up, and I'll take any excuse to show this weird, glitchy pathfinding that the game tries to perform when you use the pole to retrieve the belt from halfway across the screen, so hee hee ha ha. Anyway, the soft lock here comes into play if you manage to lose the pole prematurely. If you go to Ortega and go through everything you're supposed to do here, which involves blowing up the shield generator with a handful of explosives, you're meant to use the pole to jump across this gap in the volcanic rock on the return trip, and when you do, the pole falls into the lava. So, if you still haven't gotten the invisibility belt by this point, and you don't have enough money to buy the Orid on a stick from Fester, now you are indeed shit out of luck. But as I said, you really have to go out of your way to find yourself in this situation. So much so that I'd hardly even call it a dick move. I mean, the game gives you every opportunity to not screw yourself over here. So honestly, I think the whole business with the belt and the pole was just an oversight, really. It strikes me as a fairly odd situation, even, that you can use the pole in the first place, even though it's technically a perfectly viable solution. And it also strikes me as something that was put in late at night and forgotten about the next day, because that would kind of explain Roger's sick dance moves here. And seriously, this only happens if you try to use the pole to get the belt. If you try to use the Orid on a stick from too far away, you just get the King's Quest 4 treatment. You're not close enough. So I very much doubt that anyone who programmed on this game even remembers that the option with the pole is in here in the first place. But as far as obscure ways to fuck yourselves into an unwinnable state, there's nothing that beats this next one. Get ready, sit down, have a coffee, maybe some relaxing tea, or whatever you imbibe to calm your fucking nerves. Because here we fucking go. By far, the most curious and bizarre way to soft lock yourself in Space Quest 3, or indeed any of the Space Quest games in the series, or perhaps even in the history of computer gaming itself, requires a set of circumstances and a degree of patience that's so astronomically unlikely. It sent shockwaves through my SQH Discord when it was discovered. We've been playing these games for over 30 years now. We were starting to think nothing could surprise us anymore, but boy, oh fucking boy, were we ever wrong. No one, and I mean no one, not even the almighty Sluicebox who ported this game to Scum VM and is a certified Easter egg hunting ninja, knew it was in here, and to this day, we're still scratching our heads as to why it's in here, because it makes literally no goddamn sense, but enough preambling, here it is, and here's how to do it. At the end of the game, Roger engages in a dogfight shootout sequence where you're meant to shoot down these enemy skull fighters before they drain your shields. In a normal playthrough, this sequence is triggered just after you escape the moon with the two guys from Andromeda in tow, and upon completing it, the game is essentially over. The player no longer has any input, and the final cutscene of you barreling into a black hole and dropping off the two guys on the doorstep of Sierra Online circa 1989 plays. That's how the sequence is supposed to play out. But what if I told you? You can actually sequence break the game and trigger this dogfight sequence way earlier than you're supposed to. Yeah, it turns out that there's actually a timer running in the background that will spawn the skull fighters and trigger the dogfight sequence, regardless of how far along you are in the game. If the timer runs out, your ship's radar will blip to tell you that you've got incoming hostiles, and at this point, you have no other option than to go into your ship's computer and shoot them down. Otherwise, they'll just blast you out of the cosmos and it's an instant game over. So, how long does it take for this timer to run out, I hear you wonder? Oh, just about 18 hours. Yeah, 18. Not 18 in-game ticks or cycles or anything like literally 18 fucking hours. And what actually happens is, at the start of the game, a timer is set to the highest value a variable in the game can have, 65,535. Much like the alien embryo timer in Space Quest 2 that I covered in the previous episode, this timer only counts down on certain screens in the game, and in this case, those are the screens inside the aluminum mallard. Anywhere else in the game, the timer is paused. So basically what this boils down to is, if you sit in the aluminum mallard for 18 hours straight, doing absolutely nothing, the Skull Fighters of Pestilon will show up to wreck your shit. And the game doesn't even check how far along in the game you are. As long as you're inside the mallard, that timer is going down, which means the Skull Fighters will appear even if you're still inside the fucking garbage freighter at the start of the game, which is just fucking wild. Now, the timer counts down at roughly 1 tick per second. It is sort of dependent on the in-game speed setting, but not by a substantial amount. Even with the game speed maxed out, you're still looking at over a half a day's waiting. And it isn't tied to the speed of your computer, so you can't even cheese it by running the game on a fast machine in DOSBox and setting the cycles to max. No, you have to get out the popcorn and take a very long nap. And I wish I could say we found out about this by hacking the game and changing the timer variable to something sensible instead of 65,535. And yes, indeed, that is how SQH's Discord denizen Koro-chan first proved that it does indeed work, but we knew we couldn't stop there. We had to see if the game actually does go to these absurd lengths under normal circumstances. So fellow SQH's Discord denizen Pickle Dog, and I swear this is true, booted up the game on an old 386 and left it running overnight just to see if it would actually trigger. And by God, it did. What the fuck? Anyway, circling back to this whole softlock issue. Now, if the Skull Fighters happen to materialize before the end of the game when they're actually supposed to show up, this is indeed a softlock. You are now officially in a dead-end situation, even if you manage to fight them off, because the game lets you play out the sequence as normal and then continues onwards after you've defeated them, but your shields don't regenerate. So by defeating them, you are by no means spared of having to do the sequence over again at the end of the game, and at this point, you will not have enough shield power to successfully dispatch the Skull Fighters, so you won't be able to finish the game. You will be dead. Other than that, Space Quest 3 is surprisingly devoid of what one might describe as dick moves. Sure, there are some minor ones, as I believe I've said a few times by now. Nukem Dukem Robots, for instance, never fails to piss me off due to just how utterly janky it is. And yes, maybe I do suck at it as well, but come on, this is fucking jank. Anyway, but as far as nasty dead ends and unforeseen demises go, it's surprisingly benign. Hell, you can even skip the main plot of the game entirely by not playing the Astro Chicken game at all, and the game will still let you finish it, no questions asked. The same can't be said for the game's sequel, though. In fact, the next game in the series, Space Quest 4 Roger Wilco and the Time Rippers, has so many dead ends and unfair deaths you'd think the designers were making up for something. So stay tuned for the next episode where we tackle a game that's seemingly comprised entirely of dick moves, and until next time, I'll see you around the Chrono Stream. Bye!